Across the continent, from the bustling streets of Nairobi to the vibrant townships of Soweto, young Africans are raising their voices. But the question is, how do you move from speaking about change to being the drivers of change? Now, today, on these wonderful Africa Day celebrations, we don't just celebrate your roots, we ignite your responsibility. See, this is a real and even urgent call to action for you to harness your voices and translate passion into policies, problems into platforms, and dreams into development. Advocacy in the African context is the bold act of speaking up, organizing, and mobilizing. It is to challenge injustices, influence policy, and drive meaningful change within your communities. It is about transforming everyday struggles like access to education, clean water, fair elections, and economic opportunity into a collective action that holds leaders accountable and empowers its citizens. Now, rooted in Ubuntu, and that's possibly a much overused and misunderstood word, and fueled by a rising generation of voices, African advocacy is not just a protest, it's a purpose driven participation in shaping the continent's future, your continent's future. And of course, young people play the most important part in this, as Africa, as mentioned already, is the youngest continent that over 60% of its population is under 35 years old. However, young voices are often unrepresented in any formal decision making. Now ask yourselves, how often do government or organizational leaders ask young people like yourselves for their opinion and wisdom? How often does any knowledge they gain at the top filter down to those at the workplace and to our young leaders? How often is there funding available for those in power, for those supposed change makers, for PhD in the higher education system, and many other areas that is nowhere to be seen as investments for the growth and development of our young leaders, as it is often swallowed up by those I just mentioned? Advocacy is bridging the gap. It bridges the gap between people and power. It transforms social frustrations into strategic action. Any development and change needs a voice, whether it's fighting climate injustice in the Sahel, demanding better education in Lusaka, or securing fair elections in Kinshasa. Advocacy is not about shouting the loudest. It's about being heard in the right rooms by the right people with the right data and story. And it's often caused by creating a movement. Now, about creating a movement, I know my wife, Dr. Roberts, actually created a movement called Ladies and Gentlemen Unite, collaborate for each other's success. And she did that in Women's Month, about 7, 8 years ago at least. And not everybody, especially women, of course, appreciated this. But it was a movement where she actually showed that men and women, everybody needs to work together for each other's success. It's not one or the other. And I now talk into men empowerment as well on LinkedIn Live with a professor friend of mine, because men also need support and guidance and help when 70 to 80% of suicides are men. But that's a different story. But it does not merely need a voice, it needs a mindset change. See, I have traveled globally for work as well as to gather knowledge and studied and associated with the right people. I believe the right people. I became part of the Maxwell leadership team more than 12 years ago, not only learning from John Maxwell, the #1 leadership guru in the world, but also associating with thousands of people from every corner of the globe on a regular basis, because I went to Orlando to serve in that organization every 6 months. Now, I also connected with and learned from Nick Vujicic, the author of No Arms, No Legs, who is an absolute legend for youth advocacy. And I became a student of Les Brown, the #1 motivational speaker in the world. I also met other renowned world leaders in their fields. But this is not to impress you, by no account, but it is to impress upon you that gathering information and connecting with revered leaders in their fields, even though you can't always access them personally, can even be started on the internet and from books, because meeting them in person is often not possible, especially in Africa. But also remember that this continent does have many great leaders, alive and past, people to study and learn from as well. See, now, even though I have been in South Africa for more than 10 years, I spend a lot of my life outside of this beautiful continent. But the most important part was that I actually took all this information and discussed it with my wife, Dr. Roberts, I already mentioned, because she's one of the foremost DEI specialists in the world. And we made it relevant to the African continent with her knowledge and compassion and kindness and the depth of people skills and knowledge she's got, especially on the African continent, but more globally as well. We took that context into and use African proverbs and principles of leadership, so we could take it to the communities, informal areas, organizations, and basically every area of society, regardless of gender, race, religion, environment, and political affiliations. Ubuntu, which actually means humanity, is I am because we are, and that needs to be remembered. That's and that's also where values-based leadership came in. It's a program I discovered when we went with John Maxwell to help start the transformation in the beautiful country of Guatemala in 2013. Now that's a story all by itself, but it's a country that had 14 million people with average age only 20, 20. So, it's an amazing story and it changed my life. But that's why I know, having used this for more than 12 years now, this is the most powerful and impactful program where everybody has a voice, where everybody learns about each other and from each other, and where we finally start to connect at the heart level, where everyone builds a solid foundation for their lives based on the basic human values such as listening, forgiveness, restraint, self-esteem, respect, and hope. And where there is hope in the future, there's power in the present. And that's where you come in. You young leaders are given hope for the future because you're here today. But this is also where you will begin to understand, experience, and feel what significance is all about, which is so much more important than success will ever be. And it has absolutely nothing to do with age, experience, the amount of money you've got in the bank, or anything else. Just your willingness to do something for your fellow human beings, to have a desire, a passion, and determination to really make a difference. So, effective advocacy, has to start locally. See, it was said a few times in all the talks. Real impact begins in your community. It starts with where you are, with what you've got. See, what issues matter most? Sanitation, healthcare, youth unemployment, whatever it is, that's where it starts. And it starts with one, the power of one. Remember, I am. And then also, of course, storytelling, which is great in the communities as well. Storytelling plus strategy, plus strategies actually becomes influence. See, because your story builds empathy, your strategy builds momentum. See, and everyone has a story and everyone has a voice, which I teach as well in my speaking clubs. This is your time. This is your time to shine, your time to make a positive impact in your family, your community, your country. You have a story. Tell the country, tell your communities, and talk about your passions and create that vision and share that vision with others. So I will give you the 4 P's I found of African advocacy. And the first one is people. It starts with one, but you need to mobilize your community. Then the second one is policy. Understand laws, policies, and who shapes them. And find out how you can become part of changing them, or how do you can positively influence people who can change them. It might not be you. The third one is partnerships. It's so important to collaborate with civil society, media, tech platforms, anywhere you can, because we are so much stronger together. I hope you know that by now. And of course, the fourth P is persistence. Change does not happen overnight. And what we're talking about here is a marathon, not a sprint. So the 4 P's: people, policy, partnership, and persistence. So you also need to remember that you don't need to be in government to influence it. Every tweet, every march, every campaign, every story, and every community meeting counts. And movements like fees must fall, End SARS, Justice for Mobat, and climate justice campaigns led by youth in Uganda and Kenya show that young people like you are not the future, you are the present. And many young Africans are leveraging social media, policy forums, podcasts, and town halls to shift narratives and demand equity. See, digital advocacy tools like TikTok, X, which used to be Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and many others are being used alongside traditional methods like street protests and community dialogues. All of them are important and all of them are possible. Your voice is power, but unfortunately, power without action is just a noise. So today, on this beautiful day, let's commit not just to speak, but to act, advocate, and lead. Because from Dakar to Durban, it's young Africans like yourself who will drive the continent's development. Let's make sure that Africa hears you and feels its impact. So I want to finish with a couple of questions for you. Will you act? Will you advocate? And will you lead? Will you become part of a movement that will drive development in your community, your organization, and even your country? See, that choice is yours and yours alone, the person looking in the mirror every day. And I would urge you to make the right choices and be the change this beautiful African continent needs. Thank you.